Namaskar friends, I welcome you back to video 10 of week 9. In this week, during this video we'll talk about deception, stress and discourse coherence in high risk cross border interrogations. Let's talk about the situation when stress and strategy meet in cross border interrogation rooms. Friends, today we will enter a high intensity space of cross border interrogations. These rooms where offenders strategize, survivors struggle to recall events, and investigators navigate multiple languages, cultures, and psychological states. Deception does not look the same across borders. Stress does not manifest the same across cultures. And friends, discourse coherence cannot be evaluated without understanding the entire emotional and linguistic landscape. Our task is to unravel this complexity. Now, you must have a question in your mind that why cross-border context intensify deception and stress behaviors. Let's understand this. Friends, when individuals are questioned in a foreign country, stress amplifies dramatically. They face unfamiliar authority structures, legal systems, cultural expectations, and linguistic barriers. This heightened stress produces speech marked by long pauses, rapid code switching, contradictory tense usage, fragmented syntax, and emotional compression or exaggeration. Deception becomes harder to detect because stress affects genuine and deceptive speech differently. Coherence, the logical flow of events, is often disrupted in cross-border interrogations. Victims reconstruct memories through emotional anchors. Offenders can reconstruct narratives for manipulation or self-preservation. External stressors such as fear of deportation, detention, or gang retaliation affect how stories unfold. Evaluating coherence requires understanding context, not just merely observing structure. Friends, remember, when the deception mimics the stress mimics the deception. This is one of the most challenging areas for investigators. Stress can make truthful individuals sound deceptive. How? When they hesitate, struggle to recall dates, mix languages, or appear overly nervous. On the other hand, deceptive individuals sometimes appear calm because they have rehearsed their answers. Forensic linguists must differentiate between stress-driven fragmentation and deception-driven manipulation. This distinction requires psychological insight and linguistic precision. Friends, let's talk about strategic language used by transactional offenders. Transactional offenders often use language very strategically. They may pretend not to understand questions to delay proceedings. They may switch languages mid-answer to avoid specificity. They may select a language that limits investigators' ability to challenge details, or simply manipulate interpreter dynamics to control information flow. These tactics complicate deception detection and require rigorous linguistic analysis. Now let's talk about cognitive load in multilingual lying. Friends, lying in a multilingual environment creates additional cognitive load. A deceptive speaker must create false content, number one, then monitor their linguistic accuracy, then avoid revealing dialect clues, then manage emotional reactions, and track the investigator's comprehension. This overload leads to linguistic leakage, unexpected slips into mother tongue, inconsistent vocabulary, unusual phrasing, or loss of grammatical stability. Friends, these signals are powerful indicators of deception under multilingual strain. Let's understand by one example. This example is about international smuggling suspect using code switching to evade details. In a case of smuggling, the suspect altered between English, Bengali, and Thai during interrogation. Each time investigators probed operational specifics, he switched into a language they did not understand. The linguistic analysis revealed that the switching was tactical, not emotional. The pattern exposed deliberate avoidance rather than confusion. Once appropriate interpreters were involved, inconsistencies in the narrative became very clear. In another example of a trafficking survival who was wrongly judged incoherent due to cultural narrative style, a survivor from East Africa described her experience through circular storytelling, a cultural narrative style that returns repeatedly to the emotional center rather than moving linearly through events. Investigators initially misjudged the coherence as evasiveness. Linguistic analysis showed that her narrative structure was culturally typical and reflected genuine trauma recall. Understanding this prevented wrongful credibility assessment. Let's talk about high stress emotional suppression and its linguistic effects. Friends, in cross border interrogations, some individuals suppress emotions due to fear of legal outcomes or maybe cultural expectations. These kind of emotional suppressions produces flat tone, minimal evaluating language, short answers, and many a times over controlled phrasing. These features can be misread as deception by investigators unfamiliar with emotion regulations across cultures. Linguists ensure that courts recognize emotional suppression as psychological survival mechanism, not an indicator of guilt. When it comes to interpreter mediation in high risk interrogations, friends, the interpreters in high risk transactional cases face overwhelming pressure. They find soften aggressive tones, omit repetition or hesitation, alter culturally lauded expressions, or compress detail into simpler languages. These shifts influence how investigators perceive risk and credibility. Linguists analyze these mediation effects and clarify where meaning has been unintentionally reshaped. Friends, linguists help by analyzing cross-linguistic inference. Second one is cross-linguistic interference. Third one is deception indicators modified by stress. Fourth one is dialect features signaling regional origin. Fifth one is strategic code switching. And the next one is trauma-induced fragmentation. This is how the linguist assist investigators in high-risk cross-border interrogations. Their insight allows investigators to structure more effective follow-up in form of questions and avoid misjudging multilingual or traumatized individuals. Friends, what are the ethical responsibilities in transactional interrogations? That's a very important thing to be understood. The linguist must maintain the ethical vigilance. They protect vulnerable speakers, highlight cultural misunderstandings, advocate for appropriate interpretation support, and caution against interpreting linguistic behavior through monolingual assumptions. Friends, integrity and cultural sensitivity ensure that analysis supports justice, not biases. Friends, language under pressure tells a story, but only when we listen to it properly. Cross-border interrogations push language, psychology, and cognition to their limits. By combining linguistic expertise with cultural awareness, we can create fairer investigative environments and more accurate interpretations. That's all for this video. I'm sure that you must have enjoyed this walkthrough with me. In the next video, we'll explore risk assessment, risk communication, offender intent, and linguistic markers of escalation, depending your understanding of forensic psycholinguistics for week 9. Unless I catch you in the next video, stay tuned with the course. Thank you very much.